Have your Bibles. We're going to go back into Genesis chapter 39. We've been going through the book of Genesis. It's taken a year and a half and we've gotten to chapter 39, but we've been going through the book of Genesis for the last year and I think a half. And we're at Joseph now. And it's like I said a couple of weeks ago when we started this, the last journey in Genesis with Joseph. I titled this, that'll go through the rest of the end of this chapter, was what was meant for his bad, which is Joseph, turned out for the good. And we know that turned out for the good as we get toward the end of the chapter for his brothers. In the way of review, Joseph's brothers didn't like him because he would go home and tell Dad what they were doing. And then also, they looked at him. I didn't see Joseph as a braggart, but I thought they looked at him as a braggart because he would say, I had a dream. And here's my dream. And y'all are going to bow down and worship me. And I don't think he meant anything by it, but they took it totally wrong. So what did they decide to do? Who can tell me?
Throw him in the pit.
Throw him in the pit.
Sell him.
And then they decided to sell him. Their first instincts, their first desires was what? Let's kill him. Let's get rid of him. We'll go home and tell Dad he got killed by wild animals. They end up doing that anyway after they sell him and said, hey, Joseph got killed. But in essence, they sold him. And then Joseph got sold to who? Potiphar. And we last week we talked that and I actually preached it last week, that as Joseph was sold to Potiphar, what was the main thing behind that? Do you guys remember? Said the Lord was with Joseph. Here's Joseph, a slave, but yet he is in. Potiphar didn't have to worry about anything. Potiphar didn't fret about anything. Potiphar didn't ask, how's this going? What are we doing over here? Potiphar didn't say, oh, I've got a slave running this. Potiphar worried for nothing. He handled his business, that he was supposed to handle his business for Pharaoh, and we see that as God blessed not only Potiphar through Joseph, but God blessed Joseph in this. But then we get to verse 7. We get to verse 7, and that's where we'll start today. And Joseph's character, as we've studied this in many commentaries, I said, a lot of them compare Joseph's character to Jesus' character. Because you don't ever read anything that Joseph did bad and how he carried himself. And Joseph's character compared to his brother's character was one that was a person who lived for God, who walked with God, who didn't want to do anything wrong. And it says this, I'm going to go back to verse 6, and I'm going to read this the last part of it. It said, and Joseph was a goodly person and well favored. That just means he was handsome in form and appearance. And then as we get into verse 7, it says this. It says, and it came to pass after these things that his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph, and she said, lie with me. So we see here Joseph's at home, or Joseph taking care of Potiphar's place and taking care of the business and running around. Potiphar, from what we understand, is he's the head guy for Pharaoh. He's over the army. He's over, and Potiphar's gone a lot. And here is his wife, and she looks at Joseph, and she sees him, and in her mind she's like, well, Joseph belongs to my husband, which means I'm in charge of him. And she desired him. It said he was handsome to look at. And she looks at him. And I'm certain as she walked by, it wasn't, hey, I need you to do this, or I need you to do this, or hey, Joseph. It was probably always a little bit of flirting. And to me, Joseph's character, he kept on walking, okay? He kept on doing what he's supposed to do. But temptation was on the prowl. Temptation was on the prowl. Here is her doing everything. Do you know, have you ever thought about this? Satan is going to throw things at you to make you fail. Satan's going to put you in predicaments. Most of the time, Satan, and I'm not saying this about Joseph, but Satan knows what your weak points are. Satan knows what will get you. For one person in here, it may not be sex. It may be any little thing like anger will set you off and set you into something that a person you don't need to be. But then again, Satan's going to throw anything he can at you in the hopes that you're going to fail, right? I agree. I think so. And here it is. She had to be a beautiful woman because she was Potiphar's wife. I'm sure she was pretty. And I'm sure she was the kind of lady that got what she wanted when she wanted it. And here she is. She sees Joseph, and it's something she desires. But I like this. Joseph says this. So she says, lie with me. But in verse 8-9 it says this, but he refused and said to his master's wife, behold, my master knows not what is with me in the house. Or he doesn't know what's going on in the house. He has left me in control. He worries for nothing in this house, and he has committed all that he had to my hands. He looks at her and says, hey, look, Potiphar trusts me. He knows nothing. He doesn't have to worry about anything that's going on here. He trusts me for everything, that he doesn't have to worry. There is none greater in this house than I. Neither hath he kept back anything from me but thee, because thou art his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? And I love it. I titled this one, I can't do this great wickedness and sin against God. Joseph refuses the temptation. There's no, hey, I'm a little worried that, you're attractive, you're beautiful, he's not here. Okay, no. Joseph says no. Joseph says, plain and simple, no. I know there's some things going on with Tony Evans right now, but I like one thing that I remember learning in Bible college from Tony Evans. Tony Evans said one time that he was getting into an elevator, and two women got in the elevator at the same time that he got into it. He was at a big Bible meeting, convention, and he got into this elevator, and the two ladies got into the elevator at the same time. And him being just a gentleman and being nice, he said, ladies, what floor are y'all getting off of? And they basically looked at him and said, well, whatever floor you're getting off of, we're getting off at that same floor. He said instantly he got out of the elevator and he fled. Joseph, during this time, is sitting there and he says, no, I can't do this thing. You don't understand. I cannot do this. And then there was a couple of things why he said that he could not do this. And he gives the reason why. He's trusted. Here's Joseph. Now get this. Joseph is not a citizen working for Potiphar. He is a slave working for Potiphar. He was sold by his brothers to the Ishmaelites, and then the Ishmaelites sold him to Potiphar. But he had gained so much trust, and Potiphar had seen that something was with him, that he trusted him with everything he said. He said, I am basically unsupervised in this house. I have a great work to do. Then he says, most importantly, you are married. You are married. There was an importance about the marriage vows. You are married. And that's something that's sad today, that it's not very important to people anymore. Marriage is just a thing. Marriage is just to have somebody at home, but do whatever you want to when you want to. And he says, you are a married woman and you are married to Potiphar. And then he said also this is wicked. This is wicked. This is wrong. But what I like best, I will be sinning against my God. Joseph knew that was wrong in God's eyes. And if we as Christians would take the time and evaluate our life and study our life and ask ourselves, what are the things that we're doing that's hampering her relationship with him. For each and every one of us in here, it would be something different. What is keeping us from being our best, doing our best, and walking with God and getting the best from God in our life that is some form of sin that is hurting us? For some people, they put work ahead of everything. For others, it could be many forms of different. It always doesn't have to be bad. Some things that are good in this life are bad because it pulls us away from Him. And Joseph said, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to sin against my God. I cannot do this. This is wrong. No. Verse 10 says this. And it came to pass, as she spake to Joseph day by day, that he hearkened not unto her to lie by her or to be with her. She was relentless. And temptation is relentless. It will do everything. It's always on the prowl. It's always there to attack. She flirted and propositioned him daily. Daily, like I said, she was relentless. She didn't stop. She didn't give up. There was always something that she was always around him. She was always, and David, I know you have this kind of trouble all the time. She was always flirting. She was always, it was relentless. Go back to your own life, whatever you're going through, or what temptation. It's always there. It's always attacking. Isn't it easier to just get mad? Lose your temper. Go ahead and say, and I know some of this stuff sounds stupid. Go ahead and let a couple cuss words fly. It's not going to hurt no one. Just say them to yourself. Just let it go. Hey, just that one time of indiscretion. You need to feel good. You need to feel okay. Go ahead. No one's going to know that you took a couple of pads and pencils and everything from the office. It's okay. You need them at home. Why should you have to pay for them? Go ahead. And she continually. Temptation is relentless in its pursuit to cause you to fall and draw you away from God. It's relentless. It's not going to give up. It's always going to be there. And like I said, Joseph had no problem that I've seen so far from what I've read with sexual temptation. She desired him. She wanted him. And he said no. And he said no. And I just wonder, Brother David, how many of the other servants or slaves said no when she would come after him? This was something she couldn't have because he said no. We need to be like Joseph when temptations, whatever they may be, come in our life, and we say no instead of giving in. Because Satan knows how to attack us. You're at work and you have a bad day. Satan says, oh, the easiest thing is, hey, go home and get drunk. Go home and smoke this, or go home and do this, or it's easier, why don't you go do this? Hey, it may not be something that bad. Hey, I know you had a bad. For me, when I have a bad day at work, I like to eat. I'm being honest with you. Ain't nothing wrong with eating, right? Right. But if you're eating because you're angry, guess what you get? You get fat. And as you get fat and you eat unhealthy stuff, guess what else happens? It can lead to heart attacks. I mean, when I get mad, I'd love to come home and eat 3 pounds of bacon. That ain't going to do me any good, is it? Sounds good for me, but temptation is relentless. And I love Joseph that he ignores her daily. That I'm sure as her being Potiphar's wife, he was respectful. But I'm sure every time he saw her coming, Miss Claudia, he turned his eyes up. Oh gosh, here we go again. Jesus, Lord help me. God help me. And then we look at verse 11 through 12 and it says this. And it came to pass about this time that Joseph went into the house to do his business or his work. And there was none of the men of the house there within. And she caught him by his garment, saying, Lie with me. And he left his garment in her hand and fled and got him out. So she ambushed him. Here she is. I kind of wondered, did she have this set up that she had all the servants and all the other slaves out of the house? And here comes Joseph coming in to do his work. And she grabs a hold of him. And this time she's not taking no for an answer. She's not going to take no. You must lie with me. I want to have relations with you. You must lie with me. And what does Joseph do? He flees. As you read in 12 and 13, and she caught him by his garment, saying, Lie with me. And he left his garment in her hand and fled and got him out. And it came to pass when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and was fled forth, that he had ran away. She was at the point she wasn't going to take no for an answer. But Joseph knew what to do. Kind of like when I shared with Tony Evans, he fled. He took off. It's what we need to do. I think for a Christian, if we would learn to flee and take off and let God have control instead of us, a lot of times what we think is, well, I can handle this. I can handle whatever temptation this is. I'm good. I'm a big boy. I'm a big girl. I can handle it. Instead of leaving and let God have control. Let God be in control, because I don't think there's anything wrong with fleeing from temptation. I don't think there's anything wrong with getting away from what will cause you to fall. Because it's going to be relentless and it's going to keep on and it's going to say, hey, this is going to feel good. This is going to feel nice. This is going to be something that you will enjoy. So we see that he flees. Billy Graham always had this thing that he would never meet with someone of the opposite sex in his office without someone in his office. We learned in Bible college, and I know this, like when me and Hannah would deal with the youth, I would not talk with a girl in my office if I had an office at the time without Heather being in there. Or if I had went into my office and one of the girls went to walk in there because maybe Abby walked in there and then Abby walked out. Well, they thought they could walk in my office at the same time because downstairs the youth room right here. Heather would hear me go, Heather! And she knew when she heard that, it wasn't, did he call me? She needed to come in there because I'm making my way out of the room. And it's just good as a pastor, as Brother Ken or me as an associate pastor, if there was a female that wanted to meet with us alone, Ken would have Chan in there with him, and if she didn't want to talk to Ken without Chan in there, then I'm sorry. That's his wife, or a lady wanted to talk to me. Heather is going to be in there with me just because. It's the smart thing to do. It's a very smart thing to do. And it's also a very smart thing with Joseph as he flees. But then we see 13 through 19 says this, and it came to pass when she saw him that he had left his garment in her hand and was fled forth, that she called unto the men of her house and spake unto them, saying, See, he hath brought in a Hebrew unto us to mock us. He came in unto me to lie with me, and I cried with a loud voice. See how all of a sudden she changed? Now, I'll be honest with you. I believe those slaves and servants that were in that house saw her flirting with him. How many times have you been at work when you used to work, or if you still work, and you would see a guy come in and he'd start flirting with the secretary or start flirting with whoever's there, or you're there working and you'd see someone start flirting with someone and you'd go, they just need to give it up. Either the dude is or the lady is. But then all of a sudden, here she is. He's gotten away. She's bitter. She said, he brought this Hebrew in. And to laugh at us, to mock us, he tried to basically, in essence, tried to rape me, tried to come on to me, tried to have sex with me. And it came to pass when he heard that I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me and fled and got away. And she laid up his garment by her until his Lord came home. And she spake unto him according to the word, saying, That Hebrew servant which thou hast brought unto us came in unto me to mock me. And it came to pass, as I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me and fled out. And it came to pass, when his master heard the words of his wife, which she spake unto him, saying, After this manner did thy servant to me, that his wrath was kindled. And as I read that, I'm like, kindled, so it sounded like I took kindle wrong as okay, he was calming down. No, that word kindle basically means that his anger was aroused. I was like, okay, I got kindle mixed up in my head. So his anger was aroused. So here comes Potiphar, he comes back home and she twists everything. And we'll read, and I'm going to save the part about jail along with what we've got going on next week in chapter 40. But Potiphar comes home. She tells Potiphar this story. And now Potiphar is the guy who was over the executions. He was high ranking in Pharaoh's thing. And it baffles me on this, that Potiphar will send him to jail. When Potiphar had the ability to kill him. So the Lord is still with Joseph and watching over Joseph. I really think that as Joseph, or as Potiphar knew how his wife was. It doesn't say it, and I'm not trying to add anything to it, but I got a hunch that I think Potiphar knew how his wife was. But Potiphar will send Joseph to prison, and it says, And Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, a place where the king's prisoners were bound, and he was there in prison. But the Lord was with Joseph, and showed him mercy, and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hands all the prisoners that were with him in prison. And whatsoever they did there, he was the doer of it. The keeper of the prison looked not to anything that was under his hand, because the Lord was with him, and that which he did, the Lord made it to prosper. So we see here that as Joseph is thrown into prison, him as a prisoner finds favor, just as him as a slave found favor with Potiphar. Him as a prisoner found favor with the jailer. That jailer let this prisoner over the whole jail. There was no jail breaks. There was no fighting in jail. There was no... now go with me on that. I don't know, but everything that he was over, I just kind of feel like that if he was over the jail, it was a peaceful time. Because here's this jailer that didn't have to worry about anything. Because the Lord was with Joseph. Joseph, again, should have been down and out. He's thrown in prison for what? For something he didn't do. He's thrown in prison for something he didn't do. But he sees God's hand on him as God is taking care of him. He saw God's hand on him as his brothers threw him in the pit. And then as he was sold as a slave. And then as he was in Potiphar's house. He saw God take care of him. And then he took this great stand as Potiphar's wife tried to come on to him. And tried to get him to lie with her. And he took a stand and said, no, I live for God. I'm not going to do this great wickedness. And he saw how she was deceitful and lied. And I'm sure that Joseph thought, my character should show that I'm not kind of that kind of person. But he's thrown in prison. And God is doing all this to get Joseph where God wants him to be at. Sometimes life's going to be rough as a Christian. Sometimes we're going to face things that we don't understand, and sometimes we're going to be accused of things that we didn't do. Joseph still decided to take a stand for God and to still live for God and still walk with God. Too many times we as Christians give up. Well, if this is what a Christian life is, and if this is the way me walking and living for God, means it never said it was going to be easy. Joseph is one of those characters I think we should look at and admire, and look at his walk and look at what he went through. And we can take what he's went through in his life and see the things that he's gone through because he took a stand to live for God. That it didn't always go easy, wasn't always a bed of roses and petting squirrels and watching butterflies fly around. Sometimes it was rough, but he still chose to take a stand and walk with God. Too many times we got people who give up. Well, I can't find a job, or I've got these medical conditions. Why is God so mean to me? No. Look at where God's growing you through all the things that you're going through. When we're going through these things. So, and then next week we'll get into as he's in jail, and we'll see how God uses him through that. Anybody got any questions?